Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni mole wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so honored and delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guests today are Nan Awkwright and Joe Bauman. They are here to celebrate Mission Control, the Big Feelings Adventure. Before we invite Nan and Joe into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the award-winning author Alva Sachs. The books by Alva Sachs are amazing. We've celebrated a number of them here on the podcast. Most recently, Alva was on the show to let us know about the pirate princess. Madison and her friends Jonah, Sophia, Hannah, and Jackson were going to play outside, but it was raining. Somehow, this rainy day turned into an exciting adventure on the ocean. You can also check out Alva's Dancing Dreidels. What a great time for this now that we're in the season of Hanukkah. Dear Master Dragon is also a fantastic children's book, along with 5, and one of my favorites, of course, it's Circus Fever. You can learn more about these great books and more at her website, alvasachs.com. The books by award-winning author Alva Sachs. A great addition to any family library. Join us right now from Northern California. A real treat. We have the author and the illustrator here of Mission Control, Big Feelings Adventure. Please welcome to the show the author, Nan Awkwright, and the illustrator, Joe Bauman. Joe, Nan, how are you? Welcome.
Great. Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Nan, I'm really excited. You are the author of Mission Control, Big Feelings Adventure. Can you tell us a little bit about the story?
I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and the book is actually a reflection of my work. So the kids I work with really struggle to do things that they don't want to do, that are hard for them to do, that just feel like too much for them to do. And so I wrote a book that helps them when they're struggling with those types of things. And so it's really a great story because with Joe's big imagination and my boots on the ground kind of experience, we work really well together, collaborating to make a great story with lots of meaty content that's helpful for parents and kids when they're helping them try to handle big feelings.
Now, Joe, before we start talking about your great imagination, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, there's just about everything I didn't want to do. And so I had a hard time doing it. So I don't know. Was this a difficult project for you to illustrate?
Not really. I mean, I knew where Nan was coming from, and we had a lot of time to kind of flesh things out. And Nan would show me her story, kind of her manuscript. And then I just kind of went from there and it's like, okay, what if we did this? What if we did that? And then it just kind of got bigger and bigger until we just kind of whittle it down to what we have in the book right now.
Yeah. Nan, what inspired you to go? Because as a pediatric occupational therapist, I'm sure you're very busy. You have a lot going on. And then to take on the challenge of creating a book like this, what inspired you to do that?
Well, it didn't really come just like, oh, I think I'll do this book. It came really accidentally. So the first time, I broke my hip 2 times, and both of the times that I broke my hip were times that ended up leading to the book. So in funny ways, the first time I broke my hip was when I found out about being an occupational therapist. So that was more than 25 years ago. And so I was working with a physical therapist because of my hip, and she told me about occupational therapy. So it sounded really interesting. So I jumped into occupational therapy. And so I got the experience from breaking one hip. And then 3 years ago, I broke the other hip. And that time, I ended up needing a ride to an appointment because I couldn't drive at the time. And Joe's wife, who I knew a little bit, offered to take me to the meeting. And so when it was time for me to look for an illustrator for the book, I asked her, and she said, yeah, I'll ask Joe. And so Joe seemed to like the prospect of doing this together. And so that's how we ended up working together and how I ended up getting inspired to write the book. So it's actually a calling from God to write the book. Not something I ever thought of doing or aspired to be doing in my life, but I always did think, gosh, I wish somebody would write a book about this work that I'm doing so that kids could understand in a way that's more fun for them. And turns out I'm the person to write the book along with Joe illustrating it.
That's wonderful. I love that story, but Nan, we have to do something. We have to find a way to listen to God without breaking a hip.
I know. I only have 2 hips, so I'm done.
Talk to us, Nan, a little bit about the work and about the work that we're going to be seeing happening in Mission Control Big Feelings Adventure.
So Joe and I, on the first book, as he kind of said before, I kind of wrote the manuscript. He said, oh, how about this idea? It turned out that his story that he created, the big imagination, the big adventure that Joseph, the character in the book, goes on, turns out that it was chock full of information there that I could use that was for therapy. So a lot of information about big feelings, self-regulation, which is one of the biggest things that's hard for kids that I work with. Lots of information about growth mindset, thinking about themselves in the future, collaboration for problem solving. All those things actually were in the story. Just I had to read through the story, the ideas that Joe had presented with his imagination, and it was great because all that was there. And so that's really one of the main things I promote from the book, is that it's got such a rich, so many rich messages in there. And I really want parents, educators, other therapists, anybody who's working with kids to understand that there is more than just a story in the book. There's a whole lot of lessons that they can work with their child, have conversations about. And I also, in order to try to get more adults who are working with the kids aware of what they can do, I've added a lot of things to my website that tell them more about the story, some background information about the story, lots and lots of projects that parents and kids can do together, and lots of information for the adults reading the book to be able to enrich the experience for the child as they're reading the book with them. So I'm trying to make it possible for anybody who picks up the book to be able to use it in the same way that I do in a therapy session with kids.
Cool. Joe, you set this in the future, in space. And I don't think a lot of us kind of connect, because we see astronauts and they're always so cool. And when we're watching sci-fi, you get, Mr. Spock, who has no emotions. But it's a kind of a great place to talk about controlling our feelings and our emotions, because you really can't flip out when you're on a space mission. You kind of have to be able to keep it together.
Yeah. So I'm just a big movie nerd, comic nerd. I've always been into that kind of stuff. And so what I wanted to do was just kind of, as this being my first children's book, I wanted to do like little homages to everything that I've been kind of into. And I felt like it lended itself well with the story. And so Robojo is like a representation of Joseph's big feelings, and they're interconnected with the haptic suit. So everything that Joseph feels, Robojo feels, and vice versa. And so that was like my little tribute to like Iron Giant. And I have a dog, and Gretchen is such an important part to the story. and will be a bigger part in the future stories. And so I wanted just to be something kind of Calvin and Hobbes kind of tribute there, where the relation between the boy and his dog. So, so it just kind of just stems from there. I have little things all peppered through the book, which is a lot of fun, little Easter eggs.
Yeah, that's cool. So Joe, tell us a little bit about the story.
Well, let's see. Joseph has a tantrum because he did not want to do what his mom asked him to do. And so his mom works with him, talks with him, and gives him an opportunity to kind of think it out and kind of see, is like, can you come up with an idea that will help you next time, and that this happens, or if I ask you something to do something. And that's where Joseph's like, okay, let me think about this. And then he has an idea. And so then he transports himself into his imaginary world. And so that's where he goes to planet Kelvin, 273. And he's now in his, superhero suit, and his, with Gretchen, who is now alive, and they're able to communicate. And he has all this, cool, technology gadgets that he has. He has a big spaceship. He has Robojo, and he's battling the hypnozoids, which are a representation of control, something that is controlling him to do something that he knows he shouldn't do. So he's basically being hypnotized to do something that he knows he shouldn't be doing. So that's where he's doing the battle. And so Gretchen, the dog, is the voice of reason. It's this kind of representation of mom. And Robojo is his big feelings. And Joseph is in his spaceship, where he's like in front of mission control. So, and that's where kind of the adventure kind of goes from there to finally he defeats the hypnozoids in this little battle. And then he is more learned, I guess. And he knows more practice, and he knows for next time that he has these tools that he can use the next time he has a tantrum, or he's doesn't want to do something he's asked to do. So he can refer back to this.
Neat. Nan, we talk, this book is chock full of fun and technology, and kids' lives these days are filled with fun. And I'm sure that your experience as an occupational therapist, you've seen the, kids just becoming more and more overwhelmed with technology. Do you think that all this tech is making it more difficult for kids to control their behavior and do those things that they don't want to do?
I do have parents who do tell me that when they take a break from technology, things improve almost instantly. And the kids actually kind of forget about it. So I think that they are usually pretty happy about being able to have a different experience in their home when there's not all that technology. On the other hand, the technology during the pandemic has been really helpful to parents who need to work. And so it's a hard decision for parents to make because they need the time. But on the other hand, they recognize that this is something that's making it hard for for some children to be able to do what's expected, because on the computer or on the screens, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Full control.
Interesting. Tell me, Nan, can you talk a little bit, because I think people know when you say physical therapist, they have a great idea of what a physical therapist does and a speech therapist. But occupational therapist is one of those jobs, position, vocations that is different depending on what setting the occupational therapist is working in. Can you tell us a little bit more about what an occupational therapist does?
Well, you're right. It does depend on the setting, and it can be adults rehab, which is what most people are familiar with. They'll often say, "Oh, my mom was in the hospital after she broke her hip, and she got occupational therapy rehab." So actually, when I broke my hip, the same thing happened to me. I got occupational therapy. And, but for me, occupational therapy, working with children, again, can be very, very, very varied. Like a hospital setting is going to be different than what I'm doing. So most of the children I'm working with, I'm working on the motor skills, their emotional regulation, their ability to communicate. That's one of the biggest things that is hard for them. And problem solve, have flexible brains, have a positive mindset, a growth mindset. And then they also are usually lagging in their social skills as well, because they're having more difficulty understanding what other people are thinking about and their impact on others. Sometimes their body awareness limits them and being able to understand, like, oh, if I swing my lunchbox while I'm standing in line, somebody behind me is going to get hurt. Those kinds of things. So I'm working on body awareness. So this is my 25th year of doing this. And at the beginning, I worked mostly on motor skills. Now it's really more sensory skills and self-regulation skills, and helping parents know how to help them at home, because they generally will do what I ask with clear boundaries when they're in a session with me, but not always. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I actually end up going to families' homes to help them at home, because getting to bed sometimes, just like in my book, is something that can be really hard for kids at home. So I do lots of different kinds of things to help kids depending on what the need is.
Yeah. It's interesting. Has the role of occupational therapist evolved over the years? Because, I was kind of aware that, yes, OTs, they help with that fine motor control. But where's the connection between the fine motor control and the feelings, where you'd be able to help a kid regulate their feelings?
Many of the children I work with do have challenges with their fine motor control and their gross motor control. So they avoid a lot of those tasks that teachers ask them to do, or PE. They avoid PE activities because they don't think that they are good at it, mm-hmm. and it's frustrating to them. And so they're avoiding it. So they're often having big feelings around doing those things that they perceive to be difficult, and are difficult for them indeed. And so part of the therapy would end up being helping them through those big feelings as I'm working on a fine motor activity or a gross motor activity. So building their frustration, the ability to handle frustration, mm-hmm. their ability to focus on something, to persevere on something. A lot of these things that are in the book, these skills that are in the book, are things that I'm working on with them, trying to build their self-esteem and their confidence, to help them feel proud of an accomplishment. I really want them to be able to say, like at the end of the book, after the mom has guided Joseph to understand about his big feelings and move forward as a result of her guidance, that's what I'm doing with kids, because I want them at the end of the session to be able to say, just like Joseph did in the book, mission accomplished. I did it. So I actually have stickers that we've made that say mission accomplished on them, so that I can give them to children at the end of the session and say, you did it just like Joseph in the book. So they do really relate to the book, and that is why the book is valuable to me as a tool to help kids, because I can read the story to them and relate it. No matter what the challenge for the child is, I can use the book to relate to them. And then they can see, I'm just like the boy in the book. And if this book understands me like I have tantrums too, then maybe I can relate to the boy at the end of the book also, where he's grown and is more able to handle challenges. So maybe I can do that too. So I try to take the children through that hero's journey in a therapy session over anything that they think is hard for them to do.
Wow, that's so cool. Joe, I'm wondering, did you need some of Nan's positive energy and reinforcement to accomplish creating your first children's book?
I'm so chock full of energy. We complemented well with one another, so she had all these ideas. And so, yeah, we kind of fed off of each other's energy. And so that it was very motivating for me, just because this was an opportunity for me to do something, to kind of step out of my comfort zone and get my art out there, which I'd never done before. And so it was, what do you call it? Symbiosis. Good. It was a good partnership here, as far as like how we work, how we think, and how we, put these stories together.
It's interesting. Nan was sharing with us earlier that your wife was driving her to an appointment, and that is how you came into the picture. That your wife was your wife there thinking, "Oh, my husband, he's really talented, and he has pictures all over the house, and we need to give him something so he can get out there and make his dream come true of creating a children's book."
She's been so supportive through everything that I've done, like from the time we started dating to now. She's always just been like, it's fine, do this, don't hold back. Just, if I didn't have her support, I don't think I would have achieved a lot of the goals that I had set for myself. And, one of them, I guess, like where my imagination goes, is I used to work at DreamWorks Animation. And so that was such a lofty goal, for me to, put out there for myself. But, and it was hard, to get in there. And luckily, I had the right connections and I had the right background. And, she always stuck by my side, 100%, and it was a great experience. And I think that's really where I got a lot of like my imagination kind of just, blossomed there, not because I was actually doing the work there, because I was working more in technology when I was at DreamWorks, but seeing all of the other artists and what they were doing. And because of my role there, looking at all the different departments, so layout and animation and lighting and visual effects. And when I'm drawing, I refer to all of the, different departments that I worked in and worked with, that it's just, it's just motivating. It's still motivating to this day. And it's like, I have my favorite artists that I follow, and it's like, how can I incorporate all of what I've experienced into making, this book and our future books together, successful and entertaining and interesting, and so conveys the message that Nan has.
That's wonderful. Now, Nan, we're talking about creating a series of books. Do you have an idea of how many books you will eventually be in the series?
Well, we did it a little bit like Star Wars. I started the books and I wrote 3 books, and then I handed it to Joe and said, let's work together on this. And the books have dragons in them. So he started on these great dragons with lots of detail and fun with the dragons. And then I signed up for a self-publishing class to learn how to do it and realize, this is a big job. Self-publishing is a really big job. And so I realized that if I really wanted to have a book that I could use with the kids sooner rather than later, I would need to make my big idea smaller. Mm-hmm. So I took a part of those 3 books that I already have worked out and developed Mission Control Big Feelings Adventure, because even though it is a smaller little part of the big story that we're going to write, it still has been a huge job. We're both novices at this. Neither one of us done anything like this ever. Big steep learning curve for both of us. So anyway, so that's how this book came to be. So just in September, Joe and I took some time together to work on the books that will bridge where we are now with the books that I've already written. So we have a huge, big picture over a span of 6 books that we're planning to write. So we've got the bridging books ready to go. We have it all planned out, what we want to do. And next up is the storyboarding by Joe on moving forward on that.
Awesome. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about this great project and find out more about both of you. Where can we find you online?
So the website about the book is thebadgesofpower.com. So it's thebadgesofpower.com. Information about us, information that I referenced earlier, where they can find out how to use the book on their own, plus there's a live reading of the book online also from the launch day when we initially made the book public, and lots and lots of worksheets and fun activities for kids. One of the things that Joe referenced about the technology that Joseph in the book has is a gauntlet, and on the gauntlet are some tools for self-regulation. And so kids can make their own gauntlets and use them to help them in different situations. You can have a gauntlet for going to bed. You could have another gauntlet for getting ready in the morning. You could have a gauntlet for doing your homework. Whatever tools you need for different parts of your day, you can make them and just print them out. The directions are online, those kinds of things. So a wealth of information. I have some parent power packs there. I'm calling parent power packs that just tell more about the book, give more support for parents or whoever it is that's working with children.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Joe, do you have a website or an Instagram folks can follow?
I do. It's jbaumanart.com, and you can find me on Instagram under jbaumanart.
Awesome. We've had a really fascinating time talking to the author and illustrator of Mission Control Big Feelings Adventure, Nan Awkwright and Joe Bauman. My friends, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Lindsay Wander. She is a founder and CEO of WorldWise Tutoring. She's here to talk to us about lifelong learning and also reimagining education. It was a really fun and thought-provoking conversation. I don't think you want to miss it. Check it out. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, we would love for you to connect with us on social media. So many places. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. At Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and on Twitter, we are at Jedley Magic. Also, be sure to check out our Pinterest page, Reading With Your Kids. And we would love it for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. If you are a parent, you want to click on the Parents Click Here button, find out about our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame. Also check out our blog. If you're an author, please also go to the readingwithyourkids.com website, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how we can help you celebrate your book to the world. And if you want to get in touch with us, there is a really handy-dandy contact button there you can use to send us a message. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guests, Nan Awkwright and Joe Bauman. Please be sure to check out Mission Control Big Feelings Adventure. We also want to thank our sponsor, the award-winning author Alva Sachs. Be sure to check out her books. One of our favorites is The Pirate Princess. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.